continuation of our lesson. Today's segment we are going to then focus on the login and then the registration aspect. If you could remember, in our previous lesson we then talk about how to then create the login and then the registration, where the whole concept is that when we click on the registration portal, like the registration, we want the registration to switch and bring us the registration details. When we click on the login also, as well, the login should also switch and bring us the login details. Now the whole concept is we want to have a back end to control this, but without wasting my time, I would like to then go ahead and then start my XAMPP control panel and then view everything from the control panel for you guys to see how the whole thing is being created. If you could see here on my folder here, so far as what the address bar is concerned, you can see that the file is reading from the XAMPP control panel. So let's assume that you are using a local host. How can you view your page in your local your local host or your local panel? To do this, so as you can see, this is my entire screen, as you can all see here. So but let me demonstrate something for us to see. You can see that I just open my XAMPP control panel. So let's assume that I just open a new tab and then I close this XAMPP control panel, my browser, and I minimize my web page. This is my text editor. In our previous lesson we created an external CSS and an internal in the and we link it in the HTML docs. Okay, so having explained and understood that, let me just minimize this and close this and then launch my XAMPP control panel. So I'm launching my XAMPP control panel. So this is my XAMPP control panel. So I'll start my Apache. Now the reason why I'm starting my Apache is that, if you could remember in our previous lesson, I then talk about that I did not create any database to control the form, so I can equally launch my Apache and I'm good to go. But before then, let me show you guys something. When you open this PC, for instance, and then you go directly to your local disk, and then you go to your XAMPP folder and you go to your htdocs, for instance, you realize that the name that we gave to the project is called login and registration. This is the name given to our project, as you can all see here. This is it. So this is the name. Okay, I'll copy that. So login and registration. Okay, so having seen the projects folder, I'll minimize that, and then as indeed I have started my XAMPP control panel on in my browser, then I'll go ahead and type localhost. Okay, so before then, let me show you guys something. Before I start localhost, you can equally be on the XAMPP control panel and click on what we have, admin. Okay, you can click on admin and it will take you directly to display the localhost so far as the XAMPP control panel dashboard is concerned. As we can all see here, you can see that it's displaying localhost dashboard, and this is the dashboard of the XAMPP control panel. So the XAMPP localhost that I'm using is 7.4.33. That is what I'm using on my machine. So you can also use 7.8 depending on the one you are conversant with. So as I have that, so I can equally just highlight this where I have localhost and then type my login and registration and press enter. So the moment I press enter, you can see that it display my web page for me, where I have my login and then registration. Having said that, I like to switch my text editor to explain something. When we come to the text editor, for instance, when we scroll down here, you can see that we created a form, and there are two forms. The first form controls the login, which will link it to the php.myadmin, which I said will be creating, how do you call it, a database to link that into the php.myadmin. Then we have the registration also, which also we are going to alter it. When we register, it's going to call registration form registration.php. But when you watch the fields, when you see the first for input required, the input that was required was that a placeholder known as what? Full name of the whoever that is registering. We required the email of whoever that is registering, and then we went ahead and then calling the password. But you see, there is a problem. What is that problem? If the person types his or her password, we need to also require the person to confirm his or her password, which we need to include another field. Now, for us to better see this, let me go to the CSS and then unhide the registration form. Okay, remember that in the registration form, you can see that I gave a name, or I gave a class to the registration form as hide. Simply means that when I click on the registration tab, okay, the registration tab to display. When I click on the login tab to display. Okay, now let me unhide that from the from the CSS. So I'll screw up and then click on where we have my CSS page, where because I wrote an external CSS. So in my CSS page, I'll scroll down here where I have hide. I said no, none, it shouldn't display, but I don't want it to be hidden, so I can equally say it should display, but I don't want that, so I can go ahead and take that off and then go ahead and click on file and click on save. So after I click on file and click on save, and I go to my HTML, click on file and click on save, and right click to open in the browser, you can see here, you can see that I have my registration form here and my login form. Now the reason why I display the registration form is that I'd like you to see that in the whole concept that when we click on the registration form, it should display the registration form, and when we click on the login form, we should display the login form. But when you watch the registration form, we realize that there's something that is omitted. When a person types his or her full name, his email, and his password, the person have to reconfirm his or her password, okay, before registering. But none is being done, so we need to bring that. So how can we bring that? When we come to our HTML here, where we have inputs, okay, type password, let's copy that. So highlight from here to here, and then put a cursor here at the end of the required and paste that. Then we also call it, the name is going to be password, but we have to say we have to just add confirm underscore password. So confirm password. So here we will call it confirm. We'll add a confirm to the password. So confirm password. So when the person types his or her password, the person has to come back to confirm his or her password, and we have to make that required, which we've already done, that it is required. So after doing that, click on file, click on save. Now let's go to the browser. So in our browser, refresh. So you can see here we have confirm password here. Okay, so the whole idea is that we want to hide the registration form. So why we want to hide the registration form is that when the applicant then go ahead and click on register, it will then come and display the registration form over here. When I click on login, it will then go ahead and display the login also over here. So having understood that, I'd like us to go ahead and hide the registration form. So how do we hide the registration form? So for us to hide the registration form, let's go back to the text editor. So in our text editor, we'll go directly to our CSS. Remember that in the registration form, we give it a class and call it a form hide. Okay, so we go to our CSS, and you can see that I started by saying hide.form. Okay, so dot hide. Okay, so in the dot hide, I will say display. I will say display, and I'll say none. Then I'll click on file and click on save. Now when I go to my browser and then I refresh, you can see now my form is hiding. So when I click on registration, it's not going to show. When I click on login, nothing is moving. Now for us to make the form interactive, we need to use JavaScript to make the form interactive. Now we've hide the registration form. This simply means that when we come and click on register, you should display the registration form as to register. When we click on login, you should switch and then display the login form for us to log in into our form. Okay, now having understood this, let's dive straight to our text editor and use the JS script to make the form interactive. So therefore, in our form, our text editor, I like you to go directly and click on the index file, so far the HTML document is concerned, and scroll down. Now at the end point of the div container, so far the last div container is concerned, I'd like you to put the cursor there and press enter. Then you bring the scripts. Okay, scripts. Then after we bring the script, because we are not writing an external script, we are just writing just internal script. Okay, so inline script. So we are going to say, now remember that in the form we gave a name to the form as as login, and we also give another name also known as registration. Okay, so far the buttons are concerned. Okay, so having done this, what we are going to do is that just come to where we have script and say you should contact login button, and the login button is equal to what? Document. It's equal to document dot get element. Dot get element, and this element is going to be by ID, and that ID is going to be, so which means that we are trying to say that when we click on the login button, you should come and call the login button. Now when you scroll up here, you can see that we created a button called login button. We assign something like that called login button. If you could remember, watch it in the bottom here, we call here login button. So that's what we are doing in the JS script. We are saying that when we click on the login button, okay, you should come and call this very login button. Okay, so basically that is just that. Okay, so we come here and say in the code, we say you should call the login button. You should call the login button. Then after we are done, we'll go ahead and also say that after calling the login button, we also want to contact this also. What is that? We also want to registration. Okay, the registration button also as well. So the register button, and that is equal to doc get elements, and that has to be ID. So here also we are also saying that the moment we click on, how do you call it, the register button, you should come and call the register button here, this very one here. So in the codes we put that there nicely. Okay, then we'll go ahead and then bring our comma. Then we go ahead and say that if we click on the login button, okay, when we click on the login button, then we want the form or the JavaScript should bring the login form. Okay, the login form. The login form, which which is a document. So login form, which is equal to document and get element, and that element, the ID. The ID should be login form, which you can see that when we scroll up here, we give it a name as what? Login form. That is what we gave. So we copy that, login form. So when we click on the login, you should come and call this login form for us. So we come here and put that here. Okay, so taking that from the way also, another thing we want to say is that when we indeed click on the registration form or the register form, the register form should call document. What document should get element? What element should get the registration form? So ID, and remember that we gave it a name as registration form, which when you watch here in the registration form, I did that. This is it here. I call it registration dash form or register dash form. So in here, I'll click and paste that. I've taken that from the way. The next thing I like to do is that now we want the login should be displaying, like navigating, should be dynamic. So which means that when I click on the login, okay, the login button, I like the registration form should hide. And when I click on the registration button, I like the login form should hide. So here we are going to write two JavaScript, one controlling the login hidden and one also controlling the registration hidden. So I'll press enter, then say login button to add event, be hidden. Okay, now I want to make the login active because the first JavaScript I'm writing, it is for the login. So I'll go ahead and say now registration form. When I click on the registration form, you should add either than that, then you should you should hide. Okay, now let's make the login active. So we say login button dot class, its class, which is list dot add, should be active, as we said. Should be active. Then after that, we will say then the remove button, in case I click on the registration form, then the registration button also should be active. Okay, so the register button should be active. Okay, dot class dot list, then that should be removed, and when it is removed, then it should be active. Okay, now after taking that from the way, now we are done doing that for the login form. We are going to do the same thing for the registration form also. Now what I like you to do is that go ahead and highlight from login button to here, copy that, put a cursor here, press enter 2 times, and paste. But before then, you need to bring your curly bracket like this, your comma like that, the semicolon like that, and put your semicolon here nicely. Then after that, come back to where we have login and change that to registration button. So copy registration button here, because now we are dealing everything with registration button, and change the login to registration button, which means that if the registration button is being clicked, then it should then perform the following. What is the following? Should then remove the registration form. So we will copy all this to replace the login as registration form, and that should be list, and it should be removed, and it should be hidden. Then after that, then we should say, then if not, then it should come and call the login form. The login form. So highlight from here. So login form, and after calling the login form, you should list it, but here you should add the login form in case. Okay, taking that from the way, then we will say now the button that it should call should be registration button. Registration button, and that registration button should be added. Okay, the list should be added. Then we say if the registration button, when I click on it and it is added, then this means that the login button should be removed, which the login form to be removed should be removed. So I come to login button, then I'll paste. So it's going to be login button. Okay, class list should be removed, but when it is removed, then it should be active. Okay, now after doing this, what I like us to do is click on file and click on save. Now let's go to the browser. So in your browser, when you refresh and I click on, let's say, login and click on registration, you can see my registration is now active, which means that it is active. It has removed the active from what? From the login. You can see that here is the dark blue. When I click on login, you can see now the login is now active, and then the register is now inactive. So that is what we meant by we switching from register. Then we can now register our form. We go ahead and click on what? Login. We can now what? Login into our form. In our text editor, you realize that we created some couple of form, and we said that when we then go ahead and log in, the login should go and call the login.php, which is going to be connected to our database. And again, also, when we come and click on the registration, by registering, after registering, you should come and call the registration.php. I shall get in it. So basically, that is just that. Okay, so now having understood this, we are going to go ahead and then create, how do you call it, our PHP, which is our login.php, okay, in the same folder in which we save the HTML and the CSS. Now when I go to my folder and come to my login, you can see that I have my CSS here, which is my project folder. I have my CSS here, and I have my index file. Now, having understood this, the next we are going to look at, we are going to now write our PHP login, okay, credentials. Okay, then after that, in our next lesson, we are going to look at how we can connect that into our database. So in our text editor, I'd like you to click on File and click on New. Now, after clicking on New, I'd like you to go ahead and then click on File, click on Save As, and in the same folder, so far as the htdocs is concerned, make sure you save this login.php in the same folder here. To do that, click here and then go ahead and say login, because when you watch very carefully, that's the name we give. It's a login.php. Then after that, I'd like you to go ahead and click on save. And remember that when you're writing a PHP, it's quite different from when you're writing your HTML, but it's the same. It looks the same, because you need to bring your left angle bracket, bring your quotation mark, and say I'm writing PHP docs, so PHP. Now, the moment you do that, you have to press enter, and then come and bring, I'll call it the crossy tag of the PHP, like this. So in between, that is where you write your code. Here in between, that's where you write your code. So we are going to say, when we log in into our PHP docs should then display our database configuration, which is going to be should display our database. So the name of the database we are going to call is going to be DB. That's what we do our database configuration. So db.php. Okay. Then we will say you should go ahead and then search underscore start. So let's write our if statement. So the if statement, we are going to say that when we register, okay, the modal should request from a port, and that port should be all the fields that we are requesting from the site visitor. Okay, so it's going to say if, okay, what we bring and say service bring our bracket and say code and say request that is my request correct? Probably underscore mode. Is my mode correct? Yes, of course. That should be equal to my port, which my port, okay. Then after that, what I want to request is this. I'd like to request an email my email, which is equal to should be, now I want my email, which means that any field that I request should be equal to the email that I'm filling, or more or less that will be transferred to the database. Okay, so that will be underscore, should clear that space, request start MySQL. No, I don't want to use MySQL here. Not yet. I'll use my port here and say start my script, and let the port locate itself. Okay, let the port locate itself, and what should it locate? That will be my email. Done. Now, as I said, the port should locate itself. It should locate my email, which I need to put that in quotes. Then my curly bracket. Then we go ahead and say again, the next one was password. Should request a password. equal to the same manner. After everything is being requested, so far the fields are created, we would like the SQL should select the form using what user what with the email, and select the registration, the password also with an email. Now remember that we are writing an if statement. So what we'll do is that these control user requirements. So if the user required then enter all this correctly, then we want all that is being entered to all what is being entered correctly should then go to MySQL. So we'll say SQL should call the form. Now the hash always say call all form. Okay, should call the what, the form, and the form user. Okay, should call the form user. Remember that we are looking at the person that is logging in. Should call the form user. So user or users should call the form users. What am I typing? Users. Okay, to call the form users. So to call all the form users which their email is equal to what the user entered. So that's the meaning of what we are doing here. Okay, what the user was entered, and that should be equal, which is if it's equal to if it is equal to the email that the user entered here. If it's equal to this, then you should go ahead and then what, and then display. So we'll say if it's equal to this, I get it. If it's equal to this email, then go ahead and then display, which will put that in a quote because it's a query. Then we'll go ahead and say the results should then query from the SQL. So it's going to say, so we'll say the result which is equal to query that from the SQL. Now query that from the SQL. Now if not, okay, so let's go ahead. So if the result did not match the row 1, which is num underscore row underscore rows, and it's not equal to 1, then the user is equal to result. Is equal to result. So query result. So if the user, then it should be equal to this result here. It should go to a result. Okay. So after we are done, we will say that we also want, now in case the password is also correct, then it should also display the result. Okay, so let's look at that. Underscore, then the password should be echo user. So the password should then echo the password. If the password is also correct, which we demonstrate it here. If the password the user enter is equal to what is in the SQL, okay, then it should then go ahead and permit the user. Go ahead and then it should permit the user also as well, which is this. Okay, should permit this user. Okay, so now the user have a password, so you should permit the user, and permission of the user have to be make sure the password is equal to what he has entered already. So it's going to be equal to password, then you should permit the user, and then let's go ahead by saying again, if the user's name, okay, match his registration form, then it should echo and display to the dashboard, kind of. Okay, so let's do that. So we are going to say, then you should go ahead and before else you should exit. So we say else. So if does not match any of this, then we would like you to, okay, let's come here now, because with echo we need to close. So we start only what we started by here, so we need to make sure we close it by here. So therefore else you should exit, and after exiting you should make sure it calls so else exit and call. So else, so you should exit and then call, let me my current bracket, and then you should call the echo. So you should echo what now? So incorrect password. So when the username and the password the user entered it does not match, then you should echo incorrect password. That's what it's going to display, which we dealt with that in our previous lesson. Okay. Else it should then echo again by saying that let's say so incorrect password, it should then echo and say else, echo again and say, when the person tried the second time, it should echo again and say so let's say echo again, and this one, let's say no user found. Now this means that if the user is found, let's say I've entered my email, and then my username is correct, which is my email, but my password is wrong, then you should echo incorrect password. But if the username and the password I entered is not in the database, then it should echo no user found. Login.php. The next thing we are going to focus in that we are going to now create our database in our XAMPP. Then now we'll test this login if statement to see whether it will work. So, and if it works, that means that the next thing we are going to focus on is to register to create our registration form. So all these are going to be created separately in our database so far the table is concerned. Okay, now because I've not connected to my database dashboard yet, when I click on file and click on save here, and I come to my browser and refresh, and probably I go to login here, and then I type, supposing I type my login like Armstrong or whatever, or let's say admin. Okay, I'm just saying admin at armstrong.com, and then I enter my password, let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and I click on login. Now you can see, because it has displayed the PHP code, okay, which means that it is working perfectly. So it has located the PHP code, but it's supposed to, it has not give us the error, which is like no, to echo no user found with with that email, because we've not connect that into our database, which means that it is working. Okay, now when I come to the registration also, and I say my name, when I go ahead and type my name, let's say my name is Amma, as I said earlier on, and I say Amma, and then password, my username is, let's say admin, okay, admin at armstrong.com, and my password is 1 2 3 4 5 6. Confirm password 1 2 3 4 5 6, and I log in. It's going to display, you see, your file it's not attached, simply means that it's not connected to, so which means we've just created, when you watch what we created was, when we come in, we just created only the php login. So we have to come and create the php registration also separately, so that when we go ahead and echo, as it display in the registration form like this, 1 2 3 4, and we click on like 4 5 6 in which way, and click on login, it will display, it will go and call the php login.php form for us. So basically this is how you can this is what we are opting, and we are then looking at, so far as linking our database login and the registration is concerned.
Strong computers, we're leading the way, bringing ICT to your doorstep every day. Where vision meets excellence, we stand strong, transforming students where they belong. In the halls of knowledge, we light the spark.